In Britain, summer and summer holidays are always synonymous with that very popular activity, eating out of doors. Nothing could be better than an open field, a picnic hamper, something gutsy to eat, a bottle of chilled white wine, and some good healthy outdoor appetites. Well, it's one thing eating out of doors, but it's even better if you actually do the cooking out of doors, because there's nothing more evocative than the smell of sizzling food cooking over charcoal. Now, for me, barbecues used to be a bit of a hit-and-miss affair with lighting the coals, until I discovered this, which is barbecue fuel, which comes in a bag, and what you do is you just set light to the bag. You put it in the tray, set light to it, like this, and then it takes about half an hour for the paper to burn and the coals to become hot, and that gives you plenty of time to go off to the kitchen and prepare the food. Right, and the first thing I want to show you to cook on the barbecue is a real, proper, authentic hamburger. When you make it properly, I think it's hard to beat, and I want to show you how to do that. You start off, first of all, with 1 pound of steak. Now, this is 4-quarter meat. It's actually chuck and blade steak, and it's the best kind of steak to have because it's got roughly 20% fat in it, and we actually need that for a hamburger because you're not going to eat it, but it acts as a sort of internal basting and keeps the hamburger juicy whilst it's on the coals. And this is going to be enough for 2 people because these are called half-a-pounders. They're adult hamburgers. Hamburgers are things that are often sort of just minced meat mixed with onions, you know. People don't really bother much, but when you actually make it carefully and properly, I think it's better than eating expensive steak, much better. So now, it's gone into my food processor in chunks, and now I'm just going to switch it on and chop it with a sort of on and off movement. Now, you don't want it to be too fine. If you make it into a puree, you'll find the hamburger tastes bouncy. So that's right. You just need it sort of roughly chopped like that. And what this does, the chopping, is it tenderizes the meat. And I'm just going to add a little bit of freshly milled pepper to it. No salt, because salt draws out the juices and we want to keep the juices in. Now, this has got to be divided equally into 2 burgers. You can do it on the scales if you want to be accurate, or you can guess, as I'm doing now. So because it's chopped, it's tenderized. And that's why I love real hamburgers, because they give you all the things that you sometimes get disappointed in a steak. Sometimes a steak is tough, sometimes it's dry, and with a hamburger, it's always tender and it's always juicy. So there we are, there's one. No egg in it, no onions, just pure meat. And here comes the other one. And you'll find, you know, it adheres together quite easily. You don't need anything to bind it with. And then they're going to be ready to go on the hot charcoal. What you do is just cover them when you've made them, however many you want to make, ½ pound per person, remember. Keep them in the refrigerator until you're ready to serve them. Now, I think the best vegetable to go on the barbecue is this one here. This is sweet corn. Now, what I wanted to be able to do with the sweet corn was cut it into chunks and barbecue it, but it's so difficult to cut. I think you need a hacksaw or something. So what I'm going to do is cook it on the cob and then cut it, hopefully, in chunks afterwards. Now, just put a little bit of oil. You see, you can prepare these in advance. Just put a little bit of oil on and brush it round. Olive oil I'm using here. And I don't know whether any of you have ever been to Turkey, but they cook these on the streets, street sellers, and the smell of the corn on the charcoal is so magnificent. Always gives you an instant appetite. A little bit of pepper and salt on there, and then that's all ready to go on the barbecue later on. Now, in the supermarket, you can buy lots of good relishes to go with hamburgers and barbecued food, but I want to show you a homemade recipe which is called a Mexican tomato salsa. And I think this goes particularly well with all barbecued food. Now, you start off with 4 large tomatoes. That'll be enough for 4 to 6 people. And they need to be good, firm tomatoes. You skin them, and then you chop them in half, like that. Then take a plate or a bowl and lift the half of the tomato over the bowl. That's why it needs to be firm, and give it a squeeze. And then you'll find as you squeeze it, most of the seeds will drop out. And then any that are left you can just push out with your hands or use a teaspoon. And then that's ready to be chopped. So you do that the same with the other half. And then you chop the tomato finely, like this tomato here. There it is, all finely chopped, ready to go into the bowl for the salsa. And the next ingredient is this, which is red onion, half a red onion chopped. And then this one here, which is fresh coriander, 2 tablespoons of fresh coriander this time. And then the juice of a lime. And then the last, rather Mexican ingredient is a chili. I want to show you this chili because it's one of the sort of triangular, squat-shaped chilies which isn't fiery hot. This won't burn your mouth out. It'll give a nice piquancy. And you treat it the same way as you would a pepper, by just cutting it in half like that and taking out the seeds. Now, even though this isn't a fiery pepper, you have to be very careful. American recipes always tell you when you're preparing chilies to wear rubber gloves. Now, I haven't quite got round to that, but I will give you a word of warning. As soon as you've cut the chili, the next thing you must do is go and wash your hands. Because if you accidentally rub your eye with chili seeds rather, on your hands, you'll find it'll be very, very sore. Now, some people like salsa really hot, so you could put 2 chilies in if you wanted to. Or what I do is I find after it's been left aside for an hour and the flavours have developed, I taste it, and if I think it needs a bit more of a kick, I just add a few drops of Tabasco sauce. So there's our chili. That's going to go in and join the rest of the ingredients. And then we need some salt and some freshly milled pepper. And the lovely thing about salsa is that it doesn't have very many calories. It's one of those sauces that you can serve and not feel guilty about because it hasn't got a lot of calories in it. There we are. Cover it with cling film, leave it for about an hour for the flavours to develop, or longer if you want to. And if a lot of juice comes out of it, you can just drain the juice off before serving it. So I think you'll like that Mexican tomato salsa. Now, if you're having nice, fat, juicy hamburgers out in the garden, it's quite nice to serve some potatoes with them. And I like to oven roast potatoes with garlic and rosemary because that gives a nice gutsy flavour. Now, for 4 to 6 people, you start off with 2 pounds of potatoes. You cut them up, wash them, scrub them, leave the skins on and cut them up. And then after you've cut them, dry them very thoroughly in a cloth, because to get them nice and crisp, they need to be as dry as possible. Now, these are the potatoes, so you can see the shape that I've cut them up in, little chunky pieces like that. And they're nice and dry. And they're going to go into hot olive oil, which is preheated in the oven. The oven is turned to gas mark 7 or the equivalent, and you pop a roasting tin in with some oil to get it nice and hot before the potatoes go in to join it. So we'll get that out now. Now, when you take it out, you put it over, I've got the heat on already here, over direct heat, so that the fat stays really hot when the potatoes hit it. That's another important part of roasting potatoes. So you need to have a good, strong roasting tray. So we'll put them in now. It's very difficult to buy a shallow roasting tray like this. So what I'm using actually is the direct oven shelf. This seems to work very well for roasting. Now I'm going to put 1 to 2 tablespoons of rosemary, because you need lots of flavour. It's amazing how when you eat things out in the open air, you really do need to have these strong flavours, and 1 or 2 cloves of garlic. Now just keep turning that around in the fat so that the potatoes get nice and coated and glistening with oil. And then they go back onto the highest shelf in the oven. and they'll take about half an hour to 40 minutes to become nice and crisp and crunchy. Now, we've got some in the oven that have had about half an hour now, so we'll have a look at those. There we go. Shut the oven door. All that needs to happen to those now is they need some crushed rock salt, some freshly milled pepper, and a little bit of parsley and more rosemary to make them look pretty. Now I want to show you a salad dressing to go on a salad for a barbecue. This is a blue cheese dressing. First you'll need quite a gutsy blue cheese like Danish blue, or if you feel like splashing out, Roquefort here. Either way, it needs to be crumbled into small pieces. Then combine a teaspoon of salt with a large clove of garlic and blend to a creamy paste. After that, add a rounded teaspoon of mustard powder and some freshly milled black pepper and work these into the paste. Now add a tablespoon of balsamic vinegar, a tablespoon of lemon juice, and 2 tablespoons of light olive oil. Then mix everything well. Now, in a bowl, combine 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise with 1/4 pint of soured cream. Into this, whisk the dressing ingredients. Finally, add 2 chopped spring onions, and then the blue cheese and mix well. After you've dressed the salad, sprinkle it with some crunchy croutons, just as a nice finishing touch. Okay, well now we're back to the sweet corn and the half-pounders. And you can just see, sitting on the coals there, how lovely and juicy that is. And just about ready to serve, I think. And don't forget, before cooking hamburgers, to brush them and the grill lightly with oil to prevent them sticking. Right, so now we're moving from an American-style barbecue to an Eastern-style barbecue. And what I'm doing here is roasting some spices. And I've got 1 teaspoon of coriander seeds here, 1 teaspoon of cumin seeds, or cumin seeds, however you like to pronounce them. And you just put them in a little saucepan over a medium heat for a minute or so, minute or two, until they begin to change colour and you get this lovely aroma beginning to drift up. It's a little bit of extra trouble, but it's really worth it. Never buy ready ground spices because they so quickly lose their flavour. And if you buy them whole, like these, and just go through the dry roasting bit, it's really worth it for all that extra aroma and flavour. Now I'm just crushing them up here with the pestle and mortar to a fine powder. And the recipe we're going to make is spiced lamb and cashew kebabs. And the spices now are going over to join 3/4 pound of neck fillet of lamb, which I've got in the food processor here. And like the hamburgers, you need a cut of meat that's got a fair amount of fat in it. And so it's also an economical one, but you need to make them nice and juicy. Then along with the spices and the meat, I'm going to add the cashew nuts. And I've got 4 ounces of roasted cashew nuts. And they're going to be followed by some coriander leaves, about 3 tablespoons of whole coriander leaves, and then a small onion, chopped, roughly, a clove of garlic, which can go in whole like that, and this is a chilli, which I prepared the same way that I showed you. Now the liquid I'm going to be putting in is just half the juice of a lime. And then they're going to need quite a bit of salt and a little bit of pepper, not too much pepper. And then we're going to start blending it. might have to stop and start this a few times just to get it exactly to the right consistency. And then you first of all, take the blade out. Mustn't leave that in. Take the blade out, and then take handfuls of the mixture about the size of an egg. I'm going to take 2 lots. And then, what you need to do, we're going to make them into sausages, or sausage shapes rather. What you need to do is sort of press the mixture well together with your hands so that it all is fairly evenly bound, and then put it on a flat surface and roll it into a sausage shape. And you can start off with one hand, and then you move on to using 2 hands. You want it fairly thin and quite long. If they're too fat, they take too long to cook on the barbecue. When you've got a sausage shape like that, just square off the ends a bit. And we'll just do the other one. This is a recipe I have tried to copy from a restaurant. I had a holiday in Hong Kong and went to a restaurant called Spices in Repulse Bay in Hong Kong. And I had this, and when I came back, I thought it was so delicious, I thought I've got to try and make them. And I think I have to go back someday and see if I've got anywhere near it or not. Now, they are going to go onto a skewer. And let me tell you that when you use skewers on a barbecue, you must have flat skewers like this. If you have round ones, you get into terrible trouble, because when you try to turn the kebab over, everything sort of spins round, and flat ones make it slightly easier. So now what I'm going to do is just carefully slide that onto the skewer, the first one, and then I'm going to slide the other one on to follow it. You'll get 10 altogether out of that mixture, so you'll need 5 skewers. Well, what's going to happen to those now is you carefully put them onto a plate, cover them, put them in the refrigerator until you're ready to put them onto the hot coals. And now I want to show you the fastest sauce in the world. And that's called sweet pepper and coriander relish. The ingredients are very, very colourful, and they're all assembled here ready to go into my food processor. First of all, half a chilli this time, and then a sweet red pepper that's been de-seeded and roughly chopped, and then roughly 4 tablespoons of fresh coriander leaves. And then here I've got 2 large tomatoes, and these have been seeded and roughly chopped. And then lastly, a lovely bright colourful red onion. And then the liquid I'm using is going to be 4 tablespoons of lime juice. That can be about 1.5 limes to 2 limes, 4 tablespoons. And then we need some salt and some freshly milled pepper. All the ingredients are raw in this sauce, and there's no fat in it, so it must be quite good for you. Now we're going to blend it in the blender until it becomes a relish. Now, for those of you who don't have food processors, everything I've done today can be done through an old-fashioned mincer with a handle. It's just if you've got a food processor, you can make the fastest sauce in the world. It's a bit quicker. Now, what I'm going to do with there is just give it one final burst with the bits round the edge that have got stuck. There it is. It needs to be not a puree, but just chopped up. As you can see the texture here, I'll just take the blade out first. Not a puree, but just a sort of chopped relish. And that's delicious with any kind of barbecue food. It's lovely with the kebabs that we've just made, but you can serve it with good old bangers if they're good quality. And it tastes really good. So there we are, spicy char-grilled oriental kebabs. But here's a barbecue glaze that's very popular with children. Take 2 halved apricots, 2 tablespoons of dark brown sugar, 2 fluid ounces of Worcester sauce and the same amount of light soy sauce. Add 2 tablespoons of tomato puree, a level tablespoon of grated root ginger, a teaspoon of powdered ginger, a sprinkling of pepper and a clove of garlic. Sprinkle in a few drops of Tabasco and then whiz it all together. Then just baste your choice of meat and add it to the barbecue. This really is a wonderful combination of flavours. In fact, it's the best barbecue sauce I've ever come across. I very often hear complaints from people who go to barbecues saying there's always very little on offer for people who don't actually eat any meat. Well, if you get oily fish like sardines, they work very, very well on a barbecue. Stuff some herbs in the centre, and here I've got a lovely sort of barbecue griller, which is very easy because you can turn them over. If you don't actually eat any meat or fish, there's another lovely recipe for the barbecue. This is cubes of halloumi cheese which have been marinated in oil and herbs overnight and then threaded onto skewers. Well, if the weather's really warm and sunny, I think one of the nicest meals to eat out of doors is the classic English afternoon tea. Now, this can be quite an elegant, dainty affair, but once a year I have to provide something a little bit more substantial for my husband and 24 other cricketers. What we need to do here is provide something that tastes really good, but is relatively simple to prepare. No trying to cut crumbly cakes into slices at the last minute. And creamy things are no good either, because if the weather's warm, they just melt and turn sour. This year I made some medium-sized American-style muffins, which I must say were very popular. But when I'm making muffins for myself at home, I like to make the mini muffins. And what I'd like to do now is show you a recipe for muffins. We're going to make mini ones, but you can make whatever size you like, which I'll explain later on. Now, you start off with a nice big mixing bowl like this, and the first ingredient is 2 ounces of melted butter. And then to the melted butter, I'm going to add an egg, and this is a size 2 egg. And then I've got some sugar here, 1.5 ounces of caster sugar, this is. And the muffins I'm going to make are fresh apricot and pecan nuts, and they're going to have half a teaspoonful of vanilla extract, and then half a teaspoon of cinnamon, which I always think goes very well with apricots and pecans. Half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now, you go into that with a whisk and just whisk it all together to amalgamate it thoroughly. Now I'm going to add 4 fluid ounces of milk, and that just gets whisked into the rest. And the dry ingredients are over in my bowl next to me here. This is 2.5 ounces of whole wheat flour and 2.5 ounces of plain white flour. And it's been sifted once, and now it's going to get sifted again. Muffins are terribly, terribly light to eat, and I think one of the reasons they're so light is because they get a double sifting with the flour. And with the flour, very important, I'm going to put in half a tablespoon, this is the raising agent, half a tablespoon of baking powder, and there's 1/4 teaspoon of salt in there as well. It's lovely to be able to show you how to make muffins because they really are so very, very easy to make. They can be whisked up in seconds. And keep the sieve up quite high so the flour gets a good airing as it goes down. And then because I've got half whole wheat here, there's a little bit of bran in the sieve there, so that goes in last. And if you don't want to use whole wheat flour, you can just use all plain flour. You can make muffins, and then you can decide which ones you like best, which flavours, which flours. They're so easy to make. Right, now I'm just going to take a tablespoon and start to fold the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. And I have to tell you here, don't be tempted to whisk or beat. All you do is just fold the flour into the liquid ingredients. And what happens is, as you do that, you can see it looks a total disaster. It's all lumpy. And you think, my goodness, wow, I must have done something wrong. But that's the wonder of television. I can show you, instead of having to just write it, I can actually show you that that nasty, lumpy mixture is absolutely correct. That's how it should look. Once all the flour has been folded in, we're going to add the apricots and pecans, and they're waiting over here. 4 ounces of apricots that have been stoned and chopped, quite small. 1 ounce of pecan nuts, and these have been lightly toasted under the grill. Now they just get folded in exactly the same way. It's so much nicer than making fairy cakes. I think this recipe must be death to fairy cakes, when you've got to cream the butter and the sugar and add the milk the egg and milk little by little in case it curdles. No problem. With muffins, they're just dead simple. Now over here I've got a muffin baking tray, a mini one, and inside it's got little mini muffin cases. Now if you can get hold of the cases, it's much better because it keeps them fresher, but if not, you can just grease the inside well and you can cook them straight in. Now what you need to do is take heaped teaspoonfuls of the mixture over to the cases, and the mixture's got to sort of just come up to the top of the papers. You mustn't fill them too full, otherwise they spill over. The ideal shape, I believe, for a mini muffin is it should look like a champagne cork. So if you can imagine what a champagne cork looks like. And then you preheat the oven to gas mark 6 or the equivalent, and they will take 20 to 25 minutes to bake. Well, now I want to show you what some baked muffins look like, and I've got rather a lot here to show you. First of all, that little champagne cork shape of the mini muffin there. And then here I've got a whole arrangement of muffins that are medium-sized, or man-sized, I like to call them. These here have got sugar crusting on the top and a few nuts, and inside they've got the same that we just made. Or you can use those to ring the changes with a cinnamon icing and put a pecan half on top. These at the end here are the classic American blueberry muffins, and they're particularly nice because the blueberries sort of swell up and burst in the oven while they're cooking, and so they're nice and sort of squidgy to eat, which is extra specially nice. Now over here I've got mini muffins iced with cinnamon icing and topped with a pecan, and next door I've got coffee. These are coffee and walnut with a coffee icing, and even more down here, these are chocolate chip. Next door to those are carrot and walnut, and in the centre there, very nice for the summer especially, lemon muffins with lemon icing and grated lemon on the top. Now if you don't want to make muffins, you can still make that lovely easy mixture, put it into a cake tin and put a crumble topping and you'll get muffin cake. This is blueberry muffin cake, that's especially good. Well, I think that's all about muffins now, and it's all about outdoor eating and outdoor cooking. But I hope you're going to come back next time when I'm going to be doing bright meals for those rainy summer days. So I look forward to seeing you then.